Hello, everybody, and welcome to the County of Oddlando. This is going to be my first City Skylines build specifically for YouTube, although I have done a few separate builds over on my Twitch and just playing the game separately myself. So, recently, City Skylines 2 was given a Beach Properties Asset Pack. I was actually on the fence about buying it, but this pack came with a ton of controversy. The Beach Asset Pack ended up being single-handedly the most downvoted DLC in the entirety of the Steam store. And hoping to recover their assets, the devs decided to refund all purchases of the pack and make this a free public DLC. Naturally, as a Cities player, restarting to try something new comes easy. This asset pack brings 10 individual houses for North America and another 10 for European styling. Each of these do also have variable prop placement, and the builds actually grow into larger beach properties like villas and mansions as they go through the upgrade tiers. On top of buildings, the creatives and super designers have got something new to look forward to as well. 4 new trees and a ton of new fence assets, a new parking lot, and some nice beach props. As a Central Floridian myself, I am going to be, of course, taking advantage of my own personal, understanding and experience of how these cities are designed and laid out, and I'll be building based off influences of places that are well known in the local Central Florida area. So to start, I want to fill this beachside town with influence from the eastern beaches of Central Florida. That's going to be cities like Daytona Beach, Ormond, Flagler, and Palm Coast. Of course, if you're from the area, you know that Daytona Beach is not exactly a huge piece of land. At its widest, it's just a little over half a mile, or just under a kilometer for our European friends. Dating back to the 50s era of NASCAR beach racing, Daytona had already been a cultural hub for racing fans. But in the early to late 80s, looking for somewhere less crowded than the famous Fort Lauderdale beach, Daytona's mayor had began actively marketing Daytona Beach as a great place to host a spring break, giving big discounts to college students and offering deals on hotels. They had effectively cemented themselves into being the second largest spring break destination in the country. And in 1989, 500,000 students stormed the beaches for the MTV invasion. The cost of that growth meant the city needed to have space for everybody. Residents, businesses, and hotels alike, as well as the obvious beach lifestyle. After all, Daytona is famous for having 26 total miles of hard-packed sand beaches. They continued to host huge events like NASCAR's Daytona 500, the Rolex 24-hour race, Biketoberfest, Bike Week, Jeep Week, the Turkey Rod Run, Rockville, and many, many others. With all of that being said, Daytona has a lot of demand that they need to pack into a small area. Neighborhoods like this are super common, combining space for hotels and other businesses on the main roads with dense single-family neighborhoods on the interiors, allowing more than enough space for everybody to coexist. I've been playing City Skylines since its release on Xbox One in 2015. I've since played it on both the Series X and my PC, and it's safe to say across all three, I've probably played a few thousand hours of this game. Cities like Daytona give me inspiration to try new things in-game. Dense, attractive neighborhoods, a functional, albeit underfunded, transit network, a large tourism hub, beautiful beaches, and more than enough space, still, for combined zoning. What more could you ask for? One drawback to having a large population packed into a small area is that you need quite a lot of electricity, and also quite a lot of water. So while I don't plan on building a robust electrical and water grid just yet, I do want to make sure that my city has access to both. So I'm going to go ahead and provide an external connection to both the power grid and the water grid. Seeing as I don't have access to things like a solar farm and an advanced water treatment plant this early in the game, I don't really have access for pre-planning where exactly I'm going to place these things. And with access to external connections, I'm just going to go ahead and take advantage of it now and make it early on easy for myself. But later on in the game, I do plan to figure something out. Speaking of things that I'm not going to put too much time into, I'm gonna go ahead and just throw in a standard grid structure based on kind of an arterial type of road. That way my industrial area has access to my build without having to import a ton of resources. So I'm just gonna go ahead and, like I said, I'm gonna do just a 149 by 149 structure here. Give a nice square with a block in the middle. Just have a little bit of green, maybe, and kind of give myself room to expand later. I was debating on if I wanted to do one of these roads or two, but figuring as this section of industry is about 3 miles from my main build, I did intend on expanding out as much of that as possible, and I want to plan my industry beforehand as much as possible, at least not necessarily planning it, but at least giving it enough space to operate early on. That way I'm not, forced to divert attention somewhere else and kind of do emergency planning later on in the build. So I'm going to go ahead and just give them one connection on each of these grid structures. And I'm just going to back it up pretty much as close to the road as I can without actually breaking the existing grids. And I'm just going to do basically 2 of these structures, or 2 of these grid systems. As I go, I'll unlock access to more of the unique residential buildings. And so I wanted to make a gated community specifically for some of these buildings. So this is what I'm calling Rockford Square. It's a gated community built specifically for the mansions and stuff like that. And so I'm just going to go ahead and build the basis of that neighborhood, but I'm not actually going to go doing any placing. Those are all going to be manually placed. I'll probably do a separate video on it here in the near future in the series, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and throw the access roads down and make sure that I have a grid, and then just go ahead and place the first unique building in there. With this being an American build, of course I need to focus on more access to single-family homes, because density is peak America, am I right? So I'm just going to go ahead and throw in another one of these kidney-shaped neighborhoods and give a little bit more access to some businesses. The next obvious thing I want to do is give access from my city to some of the other cities that have outside connections currently. So I'm going to go ahead and build a large bridge influenced by 3 of them in Daytona Beach. And I'm going to go ahead and just cross over this river here to go ahead and give access to both the interstate and the highways to our city. This isn't going to be super overcomplicated by any means, and I do intend to obviously go ahead and add on and off ramps later in the series, but since I haven't quite unlocked the large/interstate roads yet, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this node here so I know what I'm doing later. At this point in the build, I've started to unlock more tools for residential access. By unlocking low income and row housing, I unlock the ability to build more density in obviously similarly sized area, while also allowing more affordable housing for my lower income residents. I could already see an issue that was starting to arise. By adding a lot of single-family homes as well as a lot of row housing, I noticed that there seemed to be an issue where people were just en masse were arriving to my city by taxi and then walking a million yards. And so I wanted to go ahead and fix that early on, just with supple parking. Again, this is an American build. Come on, we need parking and a ton of it. And so I squeezed in an actual parking lot in between the buildings and the the housing and the commercial. And this was actually part of my plan early on. By leaving a gap in the grid, I could add larger buildings like hospitals and firehouses, or parking lots in between the actual neighborhoods, or I should say between the corners of the neighborhoods, with relative ease without actually destroying or disrupting any of the existing structures going on around. So I went ahead and added these parking lots, and then I obviously added some sidewalks. And you can see I was having some issues because of these custom parking lot assets that I had downloaded from the Paradox mod store. I was having like weird clipping issues where, since it's an asset, the sidewalks tried to elevate above the parking lot, which caused a bunch of issues. So I just ended up using the I just ended up using invisible pathing, pedestrian pathing, combined with the concrete, and that seemed to work all right. So I think that's what we're gonna end up using in the future for a majority of our parking lots and or sidewalk structures. Is just clear walking paths. It's so much less annoying. One thing that I've noticed, even when you're using the concretes or just the surfaces in general, is that while it may be easier in some situations to use, surfaces as well as the transparent, or I should say, sorry, invisible paths, sometimes getting the surfaces is still kind of frustrating. You have this weird connection that you saw there where the surfaces will connect diagonally, but then you don't actually have a straight shot. And so sometimes because Sims will consider those like turns or changes in direction each time, and so sometimes they'll prioritize taking other routes over going this way, just because they see it as longer or they see it as like taking more turns than it actually is. And so I went ahead and added just another invisible path right next to the one that's actually connecting to the parking rows, essentially to give them a straight shot. And then I just added connectors right there on the either side of it, in between each individual row. That way the paths all kind of connected. I'm hoping that actually increases some of the density of people walking as well. Like I'm hoping that people use these sidewalks more because they see more available sidewalk area. And I guess we'll see later on in the build if that comes to fruition or not. But I think it kind of adds a disruption as well between the parking areas and the actual buildings as well, which is obviously a lot more common to see in apartment complexes and stuff like that. Finally, for the last part of this video, since I did go ahead and add in all of the parking lots, the next thing I want to go ahead and do is just fix the cost of parking lots. This really doesn't have an effect, and I've come to see that you can literally max out the parking rates and people will still use them no matter what. So I'm just assuming, or kind of assigning the fact that these are part of the apartment complex, maybe, and that's why they're charged. I don't know what the justification is, but however you want to justify it, I am basically just going to say that in terms of lore, the reason that they are paid parking lots is because they're part of the people's rent, and there it is. I don't know. But it does at least slightly reduce the amount of random cars that are parking here, and has people prioritize parking just a little bit more close to where they actually want to be. If you like this video, stick around for the next. We're going to go ahead and build an outdoor shopping plaza / large outdoor shopping mall. Fairly common in the US, definitely. And we're going to do a ton of custom detailing, custom props, and just kind of fill in the area, as well as doing a little bit more decorating of the areas that we've already built in this town that I kind of neglected and wanted to do a little bit more of in this video. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and comment below what you'd like to see me do next. Also, don't forget to drop a subscribe, and I will see you next time.